The crystalline chandeliers of Crystal Bay Resort cast prismatic rainbows across the polished floors of the main ballroom, where children from dozens of worlds gathered for the weekly youth social. Princess Kira of Nextra pressed herself against the observation deck's railing, watching the swirling mass of young beings below with longing that seemed to physically ache in her chest. Her left leg, encased in a sleek mobility exoskeleton that gleamed like liquid silver, trembled slightly as she shifted her weight. The device was a masterpiece of Nexarian engineering, allowing her to walk with minimal assistance, but it couldn't restore the fluid grace she'd once possessed. Before the shuttle crash 18 months ago, they look like they're having fun, she whispered to herself, her voice barely audible above the melodic harmonies drifting up from the dance floor. A group of Altarian children, their skin shimmering with natural bioluminescence, moved in perfect synchronization with human teenagers, while young Zentrans created beautiful geometric patterns. With their movements, Empress Valeria stood in the shadows of the upper balcony, her midnight blue gown flowing like liquid starlight around her tall frame. Her silver hair was pulled back in an elaborate style that spoke of royal authority, but her violet eyes held nothing but worry as she watched her daughter. The ruler of 12 star systems had conquered planets and negotiated peace treaties, yet she felt helpless watching Kira's isolation. "Your Majesty," Minister Thorne approached, his thin frame draped in formal diplomatic robes. "The Centauri delegation is requesting a private audience regarding the mining rights agreement." "Not now," Valeria replied, without taking her eyes off Kira. "Can't you see my daughter needs, Your Majesty? With respect, the princess will be fine." The delegation, however, represents significant economic interests that require immediate attention. Valeria's jaw tightened, but she nodded curtly. Duty always came first, even when her heart was breaking for her child. 5 minutes, Thorne, no more." As the Empress disappeared into the diplomatic suite, Kira finally gathered the courage to descend the curved staircase to the main floor. Her mobility device clicked softly against the polished stone, a sound that seemed to echo despite the music. Several children noticed her approach, their conversations faltering as they took in her royal bearing and obvious disability. "Excuse me," Kira said softly to a group of human children about her age. "May I join your dance circle?" The children exchanged glances, and one boy with sandy hair shook his head. "Sorry, Princess, but we're doing some pretty complicated moves. You might get hurt, and then your mother would probably destroy the whole station." Heat flooded Kira's cheeks, the bioluminescent patterns in her skin shifting to deeper blues and purples in embarrassment. "I can keep up. I used to dance all the time before you got broken." Another child interrupted, though not unkindly. "Look, we're not trying to be mean, but you're different now. Maybe you should find something else to do." Kira's breath caught in her throat, and she turned away quickly before anyone could see the tears gathering in her eyes. She began to retreat toward the exit, her mobility device seeming heavier with each step. "Actually," a warm voice said behind her, "I think there's room for one more in our circle." Kira turned to see a tall human man with dark skin and kind brown eyes. He wore the simple gray uniform of the resort's maintenance staff, but he carried himself with quiet confidence. His name tag read Jackson Miles, Environmental Services. "I'm sorry?" Kira said, confused. Jackson smiled and gestured to an empty section of the dance floor. "I said there's room for one more. I was just about to start a new dance circle, and I could really use someone with your grace to help me demonstrate." The children who had rejected Kira giggled. "Sir, she can't really dance," one of them said. "She's got that thing on her leg." Jackson's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. "Really? Because from where I'm standing, I see someone who's been dancing her whole life. Sometimes the best dancers are the ones who've had to learn new steps." He extended his hand to Kira, and after a moment's hesitation, she took it. His palm was warm and callous from honest work, completely different from the soft hands of the nobles and diplomats she usually encountered. "What kind of dance?" she asked quietly. "The kind where there are no wrong moves," Jackson replied. "The kind where everyone gets to lead and everyone gets to follow. The kind where being different isn't a problem, it's what makes it beautiful." He led her to the center of the floor and began to move slowly, his steps simple and grounded. Kira found herself following naturally, her mobility device creating its own rhythm against the floor. As they moved together, other children began to gather around them, drawn by something they couldn't quite name. "That's it," Jackson encouraged as Kira grew more confident. "Let your body tell the story it wants to tell." Kira's movements became more fluid, more personal. She incorporated her mobility device into her dance, using it as a prop rather than trying to hide it. The clicking sound became percussion, and her careful steps became deliberate choreography. Soon, other children were joining in, creating a circle around Kira and Jackson. They began to mirror her movements, adding their own flourishes and adaptations. The dance became a collaborative creation, with Kira at its center. No longer the broken princess, but the innovative leader showing them all new possibilities. From the diplomatic suite, Empress Valeria had managed to extract herself from Minister Thorne's lengthy presentation about mining quotas. She returned to the observation deck expecting to find Kira alone and dejected, but instead saw her daughter in the center of a large group of children, all moving together in a dance that was unlike anything she'd ever seen. And beside Kira, guiding but not controlling, supporting but not limiting, was a human janitor whose name she didn't even know. Valeria gripped the railing, watching as her daughter laughed with pure joy. For the first time since the accident, the sound carried across the ballroom like music, and the Empress felt something crack open in her chest, a wall she'd built around her heart to protect herself from the pain of watching her child suffer. "Who's that man?" she whispered to herself, her violet eyes fixed on the human who had somehow accomplished what teams of therapists and specialists had failed to do. As the dance came to an end, the children applauded, and Kira beamed with pride. Jackson bowed formally to her, treating her like the skilled partner she was rather than the disabled child everyone else saw. "Thank you," Kira said, slightly out of breath but glowing with happiness. "I haven't felt like that since before the accident." Jackson's smile was gentle. "You haven't lost anything, princess. You've just gained new ways to move through the world. Sometimes the most beautiful dances come from the most unexpected places." As the evening wound down and the children began to disperse, Kira lingered near Jackson, reluctant to end the moment. "Will you be here next week?" she asked hopefully. "I work here every day," Jackson replied, "but I don't usually come to the social events. I just happened to be cleaning the chandeliers when I heard the music. Would you come again?" "Please." Kira's voice was small but earnest. "I don't have many friends here, and you made me feel normal." Jackson knelt down to her level, his brown eyes serious. "Princess, you were never not normal. You're just you, and that's more than enough. But yes, if you'd like, I'll try to be here next week." As Kira finally rejoined her royal guards for the journey back to her suite, she turned back once to wave at Jackson, who was already returning to his maintenance duties. She didn't notice her mother watching from the shadows above, studying the human janitor with new interest, and the beginning of something that might have been hope. The dance was over, but something had begun that night, something that would change all their lives in ways none of them could imagine. Empress Valeria stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of her private study, watching the binary stars of the Omega system cast their dual light across the space station's hull. 3 days had passed since the youth social, and she couldn't shake the image of her daughter dancing with genuine joy for the first time in over a year. "Your Majesty," her personal assistant, a efficient Centauran named Quinn, entered with a data pad. "The background investigation you requested has been completed." Valeria accepted the device, her fingers trembling slightly as she accessed the file. "Jackson Miles," she read aloud. "Age 28, born on Earth Colony, New Brisbane, former professional dance instructor and movement therapist before." She paused, her eyebrows rising. "Before his family lost their home in the Sector 7 economic collapse." The file painted a picture of a man who had fallen from grace through no fault of his own. Jackson had been the lead instructor at one of Earth's most prestigious dance academies, specializing in adaptive movement therapy for individuals with physical challenges. When the economic crisis hit, Luxury services like dance instruction were among the first casualties. "There's more, Your Majesty," Quinn said quietly, his sister. "Luna runs an unofficial therapy group in the station's lower levels. They've been helping children with disabilities, but without proper funding or recognition." Valeria's heart clenched. Here was a man who had lost everything, but continued to help others, even while working as a janitor to survive. "I want to meet with him," she said suddenly. "Your Majesty, that's highly irregular. Perhaps we could arrange for him to be brought to the diplomatic level for a formal audience?" "No," Valeria's voice was firm. "I'll go to him." The maintenance level of Crystal Bay Resort was a world away from the luxury suites above. Pipes and conduits ran along the walls, and the air hummed with the constant sound of life support systems. Valeria had disguised herself in simple civilian clothes, her silver hair hidden beneath a hood. But she still felt conspicuous as she made her way through the narrow corridors. She found Jackson in a storage room, cataloging cleaning supplies with methodical precision. He looked up as she entered, his brown eyes widening in recognition despite her disguise. "Your Majesty," he said, immediately setting down his data pad and offering a respectful bow. "I wasn't expecting." "Please don't," Valeria interrupted, feeling heat rise in her cheeks. "I should be the one bowing to you. What you did for my daughter." Jackson straightened, his expression cautious. "I just danced with her. Any decent person would have done the same. But they didn't," Valeria said, stepping closer. "I watched those other children reject her, and I stood there paralyzed, not knowing how to help my own daughter. You saw her pain and acted without hesitation." An uncomfortable silence stretched between them. Jackson resumed organizing supplies, clearly uncomfortable with the praise. "Kira is a remarkable young woman. She just needed someone to see her potential instead of her limitations." "How did you know?" Valeria asked. "How did you know exactly what she needed?" Jackson's hands stilled on a bottle of cleaning solution. "I had a student once, back on Earth, a girl about Kira's age who lost her leg in a transport accident. She came to me angry and broken, convinced she'd never dance again. I had to learn how to help her find new ways to move, new ways to express herself." "What happened to her?" A smile crossed Jackson's face. "She became one of the most celebrated dancers in the Soul System. She tours now, teaching other adaptive dancers. She sends me recordings of her performances sometimes." Valeria felt something flutter in her chest, a warmth she hadn't experienced in years. "You must miss teaching every day," Jackson admitted. "But life has a way of changing our plans. I'm grateful for the work I have. What if I told you that you could teach again?" Valeria said impulsively. "What if I offered to fund a proper therapy center with you as the director?" Jackson looked up sharply. "Your Majesty, I can't accept charity." "It wouldn't be charity," Valeria said quickly. "It would be an investment in my daughter's future and the future of other children like her. There would be conditions, wouldn't there?" Jackson's voice was careful. "Restrictions on how I could operate, who I could serve." Valeria opened her mouth to speak, then closed it. She had been about to offer exactly those kinds of limitations, wanting to maintain control over anything that might affect Kira. But, looking at Jackson's honest face, she realized that trust had to be complete or it was worthless. "No conditions," she said finally. "Complete autonomy. You would know better than I how to help these children." Jackson stared at her for a long moment. "Why?" he asked simply. "Because in 3 days, you've given my daughter more hope than I've been able to provide in 18 months, Valeria replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because you saw her as a person, not a problem to be solved." Before Jackson could respond, footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. A young woman with short auburn hair and kind green eyes appeared in the doorway, wearing a simple medic's uniform. "Jax, we need 2-0. She stopped short when she saw Valeria. "I'm sorry, I didn't realize you had a visitor. Luna, this is..." Jackson hesitated. "This is Kira's mother." Luna's eyes widened, and she offered a quick bow. "Your Majesty, I'm Luna Miles, Jackson's sister. You're the one running the therapy sessions," Valeria said, studying the woman. "I've heard about your work. It's nothing official," Luna said quickly. "Just a few children who need extra support. We're very careful not to interfere with any medical treatments they might be receiving. But you're helping them, Valeria said. That's what matters. Luna glanced at her brother, confusion evident in her expression. Jax, what's going on? Her Majesty has made a very generous offer, Jackson said slowly. She wants to fund a proper therapy center. That's wonderful. Luna's face lit up. We could help so many more children, get proper equipment, maybe even hire additional staff, Luna. Jackson interrupted gently. I haven't said yes. What? Luna stared at him in disbelief. Jax, this is everything we've dreamed of. Why would you hesitate? Valeria felt a stab of disappointment, though she tried to hide it. If you're concerned about autonomy, I meant what I said. No interference. It's not that. Jackson said. It's just, Your Majesty, you don't know me, not really. You've seen me with your daughter once, and now you want to entrust me with significant resources and responsibility. What if I disappoint you? Valeria stepped closer, close enough to see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes. What if you don't? She said softly. What if you're exactly what these children need? What if you're exactly what? She stopped herself, heat flooding her cheeks as she realized what she'd almost said. The moment stretched between them, charged with possibilities neither had expected. Luna watched the exchange with growing understanding, a small smile playing at her lips. Your Majesty, Jackson said quietly, if I accept your offer, it has to be for the right reasons. Not guilt, not pity, not even gratitude. It has to be because you believe in what we're trying to do. I do believe, Valeria said, her voice steady despite the rapid beating of her heart. I believe in you. The words hung in the air, carrying more weight than either of them had intended. Luna cleared her throat softly. Well, she said with a grin, I think this calls for a celebration. Jax, why don't you show Her Majesty our current setup? I think she'd be interested to see what we've accomplished with almost no resources. I would like that very much, Valeria said, grateful for the distraction from the intensity of the moment. And please, when we're discussing the children's welfare, call me Valeria. Jackson's smile was warm and genuine. Valeria, he said, as if testing the name. I think this could be the beginning of something important. As they made their way through the corridors toward Luna's makeshift therapy space, Valeria found herself walking beside Jackson, their shoulders occasionally brushing. Each contact sent small sparks through her system, feelings she had thought buried with her late husband. Jackson, she said softly, there's something else I want to ask you. What's that? Would you teach me to dance, the way you danced with Kira? She felt vulnerable asking, but something about his presence made her want to be honest. I used to dance before I became Empress. I miss it. Jackson stopped walking and turned to face her, his eyes searching her face. Are you sure? Dancing with the mother of a student is very different from dancing with the Empress of 12 star systems. I'm not asking the Empress, Valeria said, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm asking Valeria. Just Valeria. For a moment, they stood in the dim corridor, the space station humming around them, and Valeria felt more alive than she had in years. Whatever was happening between them was unexpected, complicated, and probably impossible. But as Jackson smiled and offered her his hand, she decided that sometimes the most impossible things were worth the risk. The abandoned cargo bay on level 7 had been transformed into something magical. Soft lighting strips created warm pools of illumination across the converted space, while mirrors salvaged from old luxury suites reflected the movement of a dozen children from various worlds. Valeria stood in the doorway, still wearing her simple civilian clothes, watching Luna guide a young Altarian boy through balance exercises. It's not much, Jackson said beside her, but it's ours. Valeria shook her head in wonder. It's beautiful. You've created a sanctuary in the center of the space. A small girl with crystalline skin formations clearly from the mineral-rich world of Vega Prime was practicing mobility movements with a device similar to Kira's exoskeleton, but clearly cobbled together from spare parts. Her laughter echoed off the walls as she successfully completed a spinning movement. That should have been impossible with her condition. That's Zara, Luna called out, noticing Valeria's attention. She's been with us for 3 months. When she first arrived, she couldn't stand without support. What's her story? Valeria asked. drawn to the child's infectious joy. Her family works in the asteroid mining operations, Jackson explained. Industrial accident damaged her neural pathways. The company doctors said she'd never walk normally again, but they never accounted for her determination, as if summoned by their conversation. Zara approached them with careful but confident steps. Her crystalline features caught the light, creating tiny rainbows across her face. "Luna says you're Kira's mother," she said with the directness of childhood. "She told us about dancing with your daughter. Kira sounds nice." "She is," Valeria said. Kneeling to Zara's level, "She would like you very much. Could she visit us sometime?" Zara asked hopefully. "I've never met a real princess before." Valeria glanced at Jackson, who nodded encouragingly. "I think that could be arranged." The rest of the session passed in a blur of wonder for Valeria. She watched Jackson work with each child individually, adapting his teaching style to their unique needs and capabilities. With some, he was gentle and encouraging. With others, he was playfully challenging. But with all of them, he was completely present, seeing each child as a complete person rather than a collection of limitations. "He's remarkable," Luna said quietly, joining Valeria at the observation area. "I've watched him transform dozens of children's lives over the years." "Why did he really leave teaching?" Valeria asked. "The file mentioned economic collapse, but there's more to it, isn't there?" Luna was quiet for a moment, watching her brother demonstrate a complex movement sequence. The academy where he worked served mostly wealthy families. When the crisis hit, they started cutting programs they deemed non-essential. The adaptive therapy program was the first to go. "That's unconscionable," Valeria said, anger flaring in her chest. "Jax fought for it. He offered to work for free, to fund it himself. But the board was worried about liability issues with disabled students. So he left and started working wherever he could find employment that would let him help children on the side." Valeria felt a deep respect for Jackson growing in her chest, mixed with something warmer and more personal. "He gave up everything for his principles, and he's never regretted it," Luna said with a smile. "Though I think he's been lonely. This work, these children, they fulfill part of him, but not all." Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of the bay doors opening. Kira entered hesitantly, still in her formal royal attire from the morning's diplomatic functions. She stopped short when she saw her mother, surprise and embarrassment warring across her features. "Mother, what are you doing here?" Valeria felt heat rise in her cheeks, caught between her royal identity and the simple enjoyment she'd been experiencing. "I wanted to see Jackson's work," she said carefully. Kira's gaze shifted between her mother and Jackson, and something knowing flickered in her young eyes. "Are you going to shut this down? Make them stop helping children because it's not officially sanctioned?" "Kira," Valeria said, hurt by her daughter's assumption. "No, of course not. I'm here because I want to help, really." Kira's voice was skeptical. "Or are you here because Minister Thorne told you to investigate potential security risks to the royal family?" The accuracy of her daughter's guess made Valeria wince. That had indeed been Thorne's recommendation when he'd learned of Kira's interaction with a station worker. But seeing this place, meeting these children, watching Jackson work, it had changed everything. "I'm here," Valeria said slowly, "because I saw my daughter truly happy for the first time in 18 months, and I wanted to understand why." Jackson approached them, sensing the tension. "Princess Kira, I'm glad you came. Zara has been hoping to meet you." As if on cue, Zara appeared beside them, her crystalline features bright with excitement. "You're the dancing princess," Jackson told us about your performance. Kira looked surprised. "It wasn't really a performance. I just danced." "It was more than that," Zara said seriously. "Jackson says you showed everyone that different doesn't mean broken. That being yourself is the most beautiful dance of all." Valeria watched her daughter's face transform as she truly looked at Zara, seeing not just another disabled child, but a potential friend who understood her experience in a way that the privileged children at the resort never could. "Would you like to dance together?" Kira asked shyly. "I'd love to," Zara replied, practically bouncing with excitement. As the two girls moved to the center of the space, Valeria found herself standing beside Jackson. both of them watching their young charges begin to move together. Kira's exoskeleton and Zara's improvised mobility device created an interesting rhythm, and soon they were laughing as they invented new movements that incorporated both their capabilities and limitations. "Thank you," Valeria said softly to Jackson, for giving her this. She gave it to herself. Jackson replied, "I just provided the space. You do more than that," Valeria said, turning to face him. "You see possibilities where others see problems. You create hope where others see hopelessness." Their eyes met, and Valeria felt that same electric connection she'd experienced in the storage room. This time, neither of them looked away. "Valeria," Jackson said quietly, "there's something I need to tell you." "What is it?" "When I first saw you at the resort, I knew who you were. I'd seen your image in diplomatic broadcasts, read about your policies regarding disability rights and social services." He paused, his expression serious. "I wasn't impressed." Valeria felt as if she'd been slapped. "I see. Let me finish," Jackson said gently. "Your government's official stance has always been that disability services are best handled by medical professionals and institutions. Community-based programs like ours have been consistently underfunded or ignored entirely." "That's true," Valeria admitted, shame coloring her voice. "But watching you here today, seeing how you interact with these children, how you look at your daughter, I realize there's a difference between the Empress and the woman. The question is, which one am I getting to know?" Valeria looked around the converted cargo bay, at the children playing and learning together, at Luna patiently working with a young Zentaran boy on coordination exercises, at her own daughter, laughing with genuine joy. Then she looked back at Jackson, this man who had somehow seen straight through to the heart of who she wanted to be. "I don't know," she said honestly. "I've been the Empress for so long, I'm not sure I remember how to be just a woman. But I'd like to try, if you'll help me." Jackson's smile was warm and genuine. "I think that could be arranged. But I have to warn you, learning to be yourself is harder than learning to dance." "Is that a challenge?" Valeria asked, feeling lighter than she had in years. "It's a promise," Jackson replied, extending his hand to her. "Shall we start with the dancing?" As Valeria took his hand and allowed him to lead her onto the improvised dance floor, she felt something shift inside her. The weight of royal responsibility didn't disappear, but it no longer felt crushing. For the first time in decades, she was moving not as an empress, but as a woman discovering that it was never too late to learn new steps. Round them, children from different worlds danced together, their various mobility devices and adaptations, creating a symphony of inclusion. And in the center of it all, Kira and Zara spun together. Two girls who had found in each other the understanding that the universe at large had failed to provide. "This is beautiful," Valeria whispered as Jackson guided her through a simple sequence. "This is just the beginning," he replied, his eyes holding promises that had nothing to do with dance and everything to do with the possibility of love finding a way, even across the vast distances between stars and social stations. As the session wound down and the children began to disperse with their families, Valeria realized she didn't want to leave. Here, in this converted cargo bay, surrounded by the sound of laughter and hope, she had found something she hadn't even known she was looking for. She had found home. 6 weeks had passed since Valeria's first visit to the cargo bay, and the transformation in both Kira and her mother was remarkable. The princess now made regular visits to Luna's therapy sessions, her confidence growing with each passing day. More importantly, she had found genuine friendship with Zara and the other children, something that had been missing from her carefully controlled royal upbringing. Valeria found herself making excuses to visit the lower levels, officially citing inspections of station infrastructure, but really drawn by the warmth of the community Jackson and Luna had built. She had even begun participating in the dance sessions, slowly rediscovering the joy of movement she had abandoned when duty called. This particular evening, Valeria stood in her private quarters, staring at her reflection in the mirror. She had changed from her formal diplomatic robes into simple civilian clothes, something that would have been unthinkable just 2 months ago. Tonight was different. Tonight, she was going to tell Jackson how she felt about him. "Your Majesty," Quinn's voice came through the calm system. Minister Thorne is requesting an urgent audience. Valeria's heart sank. Send him in. Thorne entered, with his usual austere bearing, but there was something different about his expression, a coldness that made Valeria's skin prickle. With unease, Your Majesty, we need to discuss your recent activities, he said without preamble. My activities? Valeria kept her voice neutral, though her pulse quickened. Your frequent visits to the lower levels of the station. Your association with that human janitor and his sister. Thorne activated a holographic display, showing surveillance images of Valeria in the cargo bay, dancing with Jackson, laughing with the children. These images have been circulating among certain diplomatic circles. Valeria's blood ran cold. You've been having me followed? I've been protecting the royal reputation, Thorne replied smoothly. Your Majesty, the daughter of the Proximan ambassador, recorded some of these sessions on her personal device. The footage is compromising how Valeria demanded, though she dreaded the answer. Thorne manipulated the display, zooming in on a moment when Jackson had been teaching Valeria a particularly complex dance step. His hand on her waist, their faces closed together. Out of context, it looked intimate, romantic. The Empress of Nexra conducting a clandestine affair with a human laborer, Thorne said with distaste. The scandal could destabilize diplomatic relations across 3 sectors. It's not an affair, Valeria said hotly. I'm helping fund a therapy program for disabled children. While developing obvious personal feelings for the program director, Thorne countered. Your Majesty, I've served your family for 30 years. I know infatuation when I see it. Valeria felt exposed, vulnerable in a way she hadn't experienced since her husband's death. My personal feelings are not subject to political oversight. They are when they threaten the stability of the empire, Thorne said firmly. I've already taken the liberty of arranging for Mr. Miles to be transferred to a position on the Outer Rim colonies. The therapy program can continue under proper medical supervision. You had no right, Valeria began, but Thorne interrupted. I had every right. The transport leaves tonight. Mr. Miles has been informed that his continued presence on this station poses a security risk to the royal family. Valeria felt as if the floor had dropped out from under her. Where is he now? Packing his belongings, I assume. Your Majesty, this is for the best. You've allowed yourself to become emotionally compromised. Once he's gone, you can refocus on your duties without distraction. Get out, Valeria said quietly. Your Majesty, get out. Valeria's voice echoed through the chamber, carrying all the authority of 12 star systems. And if you ever take such actions without my explicit consent again, you'll find yourself on a transport to the Outer Rim as well. Thorne bowed stiffly and departed, leaving Valeria alone with her rage and desperation. She grabbed her cloak and ran for the transport tubes, her heart pounding with the fear that she might be too late. She found Jackson in the cargo bay, alone, packing the last of the equipment into storage containers. His movements were careful, precise, but she could see the pain in the set of his shoulders. Jackson, she breathed, relief flooding through her that he was still there. He looked up, and the hurt in his brown eyes made her chest ache. Your Majesty, I was hoping to say goodbye before I left. You're not leaving, Valeria said firmly. Thorne acted without my authority. I'm countermanding his orders. Jackson shook his head sadly. It's too late, Valeria. The damage is done. Those images, the rumors, they'll follow us both no matter what you decree. I don't care about the rumors, Valeria said, moving closer to him. I care about you, about this work, about what we've built together. And what about Kira? Jackson asked gently. What about the children who depend on this program? If I stay, the scandal will destroy everything. The funding will be withdrawn. The program will be shut down. And all these children will lose the support they need. Valeria felt tears gathering in her eyes. There has to be another way. There is, Jackson said, reaching out to touch her face gently. You let me go. You distance yourself from this program publicly. Put it under official medical supervision. And protect what we've built by sacrificing what we might have had. No, Valeria whispered. I won't choose between duty and happiness again. I did that once, when I accepted an arranged marriage instead of following my heart. I spent 20 years being a perfect empress and a miserable woman. I won't do it again. Valeria, I love you, she said desperately. I know it's complicated and impossible and political suicide, but I love you. And I think you love me too. Jackson's composure cracked, and he pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. I do love you, he whispered against her hair. I've loved you since that first day in the storage room when you looked at me like I was a person. Instead of a problem to be solved, they held each other in the dim cargo bay, surrounded by the remnants of their shared dream, both knowing that love alone might not be enough to overcome the forces arrayed against them. There might be a way, a voice said from the doorway. They broke apart to see Luna entering with Kira, both of them looking determined. How long have you been listening? Valeria asked, embarrassing coloring her cheeks. Long enough, Kira said, with a small smile. Mother, I know you think you're protecting me by hiding your feelings, but I'm not blind. I've seen how happy you are when you're with Jackson. I've seen how he looks at you. The scandal, Valeria began, will only have power if we let it, Luna interrupted. But what if we controlled the narrative? What if we made this story about something bigger than romance? What do you mean? Jackson asked. Luna activated a portable display, showing detailed documentation of their program's results. We've been keeping careful records of every child we've helped, the improvements in mobility, confidence, social integration. The data is remarkable. Kira stepped forward. Mother, what if you didn't distance yourself from the program? What if you embraced it publicly, made it an official royal initiative? That would only make the personal scandal worse, Valeria said. Not if the personal becomes political, Luna said excitedly. What if the Empress of Nextra publicly announced her engagement to the director of her new Royal Foundation for Adaptive Therapy? What if this became a story about love transcending social boundaries, about a leader who chooses to work alongside the people rather than above them? Valeria stared at them, her mind racing. It would be a massive gamble. If the public reaction is negative, it could destabilize the entire government, or it could inspire a new model of leadership. Jackson said quietly, your policies have always favored the privileged classes. This could be your chance to show that you're willing to stand with the marginalized. The other royal houses would be scandalized, Valeria said. But there was hope growing in her voice. Let them be, Kira said firmly. Mother, you've spent my whole life teaching me that true nobility comes from service to others. This is your chance to live those values. Valeria looked around at the three people who had become her chosen family, seeing the faith and love in their eyes. The weight of decision pressed down on her, but for the first time, the choice felt clear. Jackson, she said, turning to face him fully, if I do this, if I risk everything on the belief that love and service can overcome prejudice and tradition, will you stand with me? Always, he said without hesitation. Then we're not running from this scandal, Valeria said, her voice growing stronger with each word. We're going to transform it into something beautiful. As they began planning their revolution disguised as a romance, none of them noticed the small recording device that Minister Thorne had planted in the cargo bay, or the satisfied smile on his face as he listened from his office above. The real battle was just beginning. The grand ballroom of Crystal Bay Resort had never hosted an event quite like this one. What had begun as the station's annual charity gala had transformed into something unprecedented. The public debut of the Royal Adaptive Movement Foundation, and the unofficial announcement of an engagement that was sending shockwaves through diplomatic circles across the galaxy. Valeria stood at the edge of the ballroom, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted the flowing sapphire gown she had, chosen specifically because it allowed for easy movement. Tonight, she would either secure her future with the man she loved or destroy everything she had worked to build. You look beautiful, Jackson said softly, appearing beside her in a formal suit that Luna had somehow procured on short notice. Despite the elegance of his attire, there was something wonderfully unpretentious about him that calmed Valeria's nerves. I look terrified, she replied with a nervous laugh. That too, he agreed with a gentle smile, but beautifully terrified. Across the ballroom, the cream of galactic society mingled with an unusual addition: dozens of children and families from Luna's therapy program. dressed in their finest clothes and radiating excitement. Zara, resplendent in a crystalline dress that caught the light with every movement, was demonstrating her latest mobility techniques to a fascinated group of young diplomats' children. The Proximan delegation just arrived, Quinn reported quietly, approaching with a data pad. Ambassador Krell is requesting clarification on the nature of tonight's proceedings. He'll understand soon enough, Valeria replied, though her pulse quickened. The Proximans controlled 3 key trade routes that were vital to Nexra's economy. Their approval or disapproval could have lasting consequences. Your Majesty. Minister Thorne materialized at her elbow, his expression carefully neutral. The press contingent is larger than expected. Representatives from 17 different worlds, including some rather sensationalist outlets. Valeria studied her longtime advisor, noting the calculating gleam in his eyes. I'm sure you had nothing to do with ensuring such extensive coverage. I merely informed relevant parties that tonight's gala would feature significant announcements regarding royal policy, Thorne replied smoothly. The interpretation was theirs to make. Jackson stepped slightly closer to Valeria, his presence a steadying force. Minister Thorne, are you planning to support tonight's announcement? Or are you here to document the downfall you've orchestrated? Thorne's smile was thin. Mr. Miles, I serve the crown, not personal preferences. If Her Majesty is determined to pursue this course of action, I will adapt accordingly. How gracious of you, Valeria said dryly. Now, if you'll excuse us, I believe it's time to begin. The opening of the evening proceeded according to tradition, with Valeria delivering the expected remarks about charitable giving and community service. But as the formal dinner concluded and the dancing portion of the evening began, she felt her heart rate accelerate. Ladies, gentlemen, and honored beings, she announced, her voice carrying clearly across the ballroom. Tonight, I would like to share with you a program that has become very dear to my heart. The crowd quieted, sensing that something significant was about to unfold. Valeria gestured toward the area where Luna's therapy children were gathered. 6 weeks ago, my daughter attended a youth social in this very ballroom. She attempted to join a dance, and was told that her mobility device made her unsuitable as a partner. Murmurs rippled through the audience. That night, a member of the station's staff stepped forward and showed all of us what true leadership looks like. Jackson felt every eye in the room turned toward him, but he kept his gaze fixed on Valeria, drawing strength from her courage. Jackson Miles and his sister Luna have been operating an informal therapy program for children with physical challenges. Valeria continued, working with limited resources and no official support. They have transformed lives and restored hope to families who had been told their children would never reach their full potential. She paused, letting the words sink in. Tonight, I am proud to announce the establishment of the Royal Adaptive Movement Foundation, with Mr. Miles as its director and full autonomy to develop programs throughout our territories. Polite applause echoed through the ballroom, but Valeria could see the confusion on many faces. This seemed like a straightforward charitable initiative, not the scandalous announcement the rumor mills had been predicting. However, Valeria said, her voice growing stronger, this foundation represents more than just a new program. It represents a fundamental shift in how we, as leaders, choose to engage with our communities. She stepped down from the dais and walked directly to Jackson, taking his hand in full view of the assembled crowd. For too long, I have ruled from a distance, making decisions about people's lives without truly understanding their struggles. Jackson has taught me that the most powerful leadership comes not from commanding from above, but from standing beside those we serve. The ballroom was completely silent now, the weight of her words settling over the gathering like a held breath. Which is why, Valeria said, her voice ringing with conviction, I am asking this remarkable man to be not only the director of our foundation, but my partner in life. Jackson Miles, will you marry me? The silence that followed was deafening. Then, from the area where the therapy children were gathered, Zara's voice rang out clear and delighted. Say yes. Jackson's smile was radiant as he lifted Valeria's hand to his lips. Yes, he said simply, to all of it. The foundation, the marriage, the revolution. The ballroom erupted. Some guests applauded enthusiastically, caught up in the romance of the moment. Others stood in shocked silence, clearly calculating the political implications. The press representatives activated their recording devices, capturing every moment of what would become one of the most discussed engagements in galactic history. But in the center of it all, Valeria and Jackson were aware only of each other. As the orchestra began to play, they moved together in the same simple, grounded style that had first brought them together. Round them, couples began to join the dance, but they remained focused on each other, lost in the rhythm they had discovered. Together, no regrets, Jackson asked quietly as they swayed together. Only that I waited so long to find the courage. Valeria replied. Their dance was interrupted by a small tap on Jackson's shoulder. Kira stood beside them, her exoskeleton gleaming under the ballroom lights, her face glowing with happiness. May I cut in? She asked formally. I believe the future stepfather of a princess owes her a dance. Jackson bowed gallantly and offered Kira his hand, while Valeria stepped back to watch her daughter dance with the man who had given her back her confidence. As they moved together, other children from the therapy program joined them on the dance floor, each movement a celebration of possibility over limitation. Your Majesty, Ambassador Krell of Proxima appeared at Valeria's elbow, his expression unreadable. That was quite an announcement. I hope you'll forgive the unconventional nature of the evening. Valeria replied carefully. Unconventional? Yes, Krell mused. But perhaps that's exactly what our galaxy needs. My own grandson has mobility challenges. The specialists on Proxima have been less than encouraging about his prospects. I'd be happy to arrange for him to visit our foundation, Valeria offered. I think that would be most beneficial, Krell replied with a slight smile. And Your Majesty, congratulations. It takes considerable courage to choose love over convention. As the evening progressed, Valeria found herself surrounded by a steady stream of guests offering congratulations, expressing interest in the foundation, or simply wanting to understand this unprecedented turn of events. To her surprise, the reactions were overwhelmingly positive. It seemed that the image of an empress who was willing to step down from her pedestal and work alongside her subjects resonated with many who had grown tired of disconnected leadership. The early polling data is remarkable, Quinn reported. During a brief lull in the congratulations, approval ratings across 17 worlds have increased by an average of 30%. In the last 3 hours, people are calling it the love revolution, Luna added. Appearing with a broad grin and a glass of champagne, social media is exploding with support. Apparently, everyone loves a fairy tale where the princess saves the prince. Technically, I think we saved each other, Jackson said, slipping his arm around Valeria's waist. As the formal portion of the evening wound down, the ballroom gradually emptied, leaving only the therapy families and a few close friends. The children, still energized by the excitement, had organized their own dance circle in the center of the floor. Look at them, Valeria said softly, watching Kira and Zara lead the group in an improvised routine that incorporated everyone's unique movement patterns. They're not dancing despite their differences. They're dancing because of them. That's the most beautiful thing about this work, Jackson replied. These children don't see limitations. They see new ways to move through the world. Your Majesty. Minister Thorne approached one final time, his expression more thoughtful than calculating. I owe you an apology. I underestimated both your political instincts and your capacity for leadership.